From now on, I want your paycheck sent to my account. That's what my son said to me. My only child. My baby boy. He said it like I was some burden he was tired of carrying. Like all the years I spent breaking my back to raise him didn't matter anymore. My name's May Turner, I'm 57 years old, and I've been working since I was 16, sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to keep food on the table and shoes on my son's feet. If you are listening to this, please don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, share, and comment, 'cause what you're about to hear, baby, it's something every mother needs to think about. When Derek said those words to me, I swear, my hands started trembling. Not from fear, but from a kind of shock that sits in your bones. He stood there, tall, broad shoulders like his daddy had, but with Tanya's cold eyes. She was sitting right next to him on my couch, smirking like she already knew what he was about to say. And maybe she did. "Ma," he said again, tapping on his phone, not even looking at me. "It's easier if I handle your money. You don't keep track of things anymore. You're forgetful. You gave that scam charity $200 last month." I blinked. "That charity helps women from the shelter, Derek. Same shelter that helped us when you was 6. He sighed, like I was a child. "Exactly. That's what I mean. You let emotions run your life. You're retired now, you don't need to worry about bills. I'll manage everything. Just send your paycheck straight to my account. I'll make sure it's handled." For a moment, I didn't say a word. I just stared at him. My baby boy. The one I carried in my arms when I had nothing but food stamps and faith. The one I fed before I fed myself. And now, he was looking at me like I was his responsibility. Like I was, in his way. Tanya finally chimed in, her voice sweet but sharp. "He's just trying to protect you, Miss May. We see older folks get scammed all the time. It's safer if the money goes through him first." I smiled. That soft, polite smile older women use when they know there's no point in arguing. "Oh, I see. You just wanna protect me," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Exactly," Tanya replied, crossing her legs. Her diamond anklet caught the light. I nodded slowly. "All right, baby. If that's what makes you'll feel better, send my paycheck to your account." Derek looked surprised. Maybe even relieved. "Good," he said quickly. "That's best for everybody." He stood up, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Love you, Ma." I wanted to say I love you too, but the words caught in my throat. Love don't sound the same when you realize it's being used as a leash. After they left, I sat there in my quiet living room for a long time. The TV was still on, playing some rerun I wasn't watching. The clock on the wall ticked louder than I remembered. I looked around at the house, the same one I paid off years ago, one check at a time. Every photo, every knick-knack, every piece of furniture told my story. And suddenly, I felt like I didn't own a single thing in it. I could still smell Tanya's perfume in the air. That expensive kind that lingers long after she's gone. And something about that smell, that soft, artificial sweetness, made my stomach turn. That night, I went into my bedroom, pulled out my old checkbook, and flipped through the worn pages. My hands didn't shake anymore. I found the last check I'd written, for groceries. And I whispered to myself, they think they got control. But they don't know who raised them. I opened my drawer and took out an envelope I'd been keeping for months. It was thick, full of documents, bank papers, a few signed forms, and something else, an old photograph. Me and Derek, standing outside our first apartment. He was 10, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, holding a little goldfish we won at the fair. I touched his face in that photo, and I said, "You used to look at me like I hung the stars, baby. When did you start seeing me as your paycheck?" The next morning, I called him and said, "Hey baby, how about you'll come over for dinner tomorrow night? I'll make pot roast and cornbread, your favorite." He hesitated, probably thinking I was still hurt. "Yeah, sure Ma. We'll come. Need me to bring anything?" I smiled to myself. "Just your appetite." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. A simple one. Groceries for dinner. Candles for the table. And something else at the bottom of the page, written in my neatest handwriting. Step 1. All day, I cooked like I used to when Derek was a boy, humming old songs, tasting the gravy, baking sweet rolls. Anybody watching me would have thought I was just an old mama happy to feed her family. But inside, I wasn't cooking for comfort. I was preparing for clarity. By the time the sun went down, the table was set, the food was done, and the house smelled like every Sunday supper we ever shared. I even lit one of Tanya's favorite candles, the vanilla kind she always forgets to pay for after borrowing. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled. Through the glass, I could see their silhouettes, Derek with his arm around Tanya, both of them laughing. I opened the door. "Hey, Ma," Derek said, stepping inside with that same easy grin. "Smells good in here." "Thank you, baby," I said softly. "Dinner's already on the table. Come on in." They walked in, still talking, still smiling, until their eyes met what was sitting at the table. Their laughter died instantly. Tanya's hand flew to her mouth. Derek froze in place. And I just stood there, watching the color drain from their faces, whispering to myself, "You wanted my paycheck. Well, welcome to where it's been going." They didn't move at first. Just stood there in the doorway, eyes wide, staring at what I'd set on that table. And I could feel their fear mix with confusion. That's when I knew I had their attention again. But before I tell you what they saw, I need you to understand how we got here. Because nothing that happened that night was out of nowhere. It was a long time coming. See, when Derek was a boy, he had this gentle way about him. He'd pick flowers for me on his way home from school, little dandelions he'd call sun wishes. He used to say, "Ma, I'm gonna buy you a big house one day, with a porch swing and a garden just for you." And I'd smile and tell him, "Baby, just be good. That's all the house I need." Back then, it was just the two of us. His father left before Derek even turned 3, chasing his own freedom somewhere between another woman and a gambling table. So it was me, a tiny boy, and a whole world that didn't care how tired I was. I worked every shift I could, diner waitress, night cleaner, nursing aide. And every night, no matter how worn out I came home, I still tucked Derek in and told him, "Don't you ever forget, baby, love is a promise, not a payment." But somewhere along the line, Derek forgot. Maybe it started when Tanya came along. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Sharp smile, sharper tongue, and eyes that could charm the devil into paying her rent. When Derek brought her home the first time, I knew something in him had shifted. He started talking faster, dressing slicker, wanting to show off like he had something to prove. And I could tell, he loved her hard, the kind of hard that blinds you to what's real. I tried to warn him, but he said, "Ma, Tanya's different. She sees the world like I do, she wants more." More. That word always stuck with me. It's small, but it can destroy everything. After they got married, things changed fast. They stopped visiting as much. When they did, Tanya would sit on her phone half the time, while Derek scrolled through bills, pretending to help me organize my finances. Next thing I knew, he had my online banking info for convenience. Then came the little suggestions. "Ma, you don't need to be paying insurance on that car. It's old, or you should move your savings into an account I can help manage." And slowly, I realized I was being erased from my own life, piece by piece, decision by decision. At first, I thought it was love disguised as concern. But love doesn't sound like control. Then one day, about 6 months before that dinner, I got a letter from the bank. A reminder for a withdrawal I didn't make. It wasn't much, just $300. But it was a test. And that's when I started watching more closely. I learned that when people plan to take something from you, they always leave a trail. They get too comfortable, too sure you'll never notice. So I started keeping records. Quietly. Screenshots, bank statements, little notes tucked away in that thick envelope. Every time money disappeared or accidentally got redirected, I wrote it down. Not for revenge, not yet. For proof. Then came the phone call. A woman from my old job, the nursing home, said Derek had called pretending to be me, asking about my pension balance. She said his voice sounded nervous. I told her thank you, hung up, and sat there in silence for a long while. That's when I knew. My baby wasn't trying to protect me anymore. He was trying to replace me. So I started planning. And I didn't rush it. Oh no. A mother's patience is the most dangerous kind. Because we wait. We smile through dinners. We let them believe they're in control. Then, when the time is right, we remind them who taught them how to play the game. So that night, when I invited them over for dinner, everything looked the same as it always had. The same tablecloth, same dishes, same picture of little Derek in his baseball uniform sitting on the mantel. But the difference was, this time I had a plan. When they walked into that kitchen and saw what was on the table, Tanya's hand went straight to her mouth. Because right there, sitting between the cornbread and the pot roast, was that thick envelope, wide open. Inside it, spread out neatly, were printed copies of every withdrawal they'd made from my account. Bank records, signatures, and 2 transfer forms Derek had filled out himself, to his personal checking account. I'd even highlighted the dates and amounts, neat as a school report. Derek stared at it, silent. Then he looked at me and said, "Ma, where did you get this?" I smiled, just a little. "Oh, I've been keeping records, baby. Just like you taught me to keep receipts for groceries." Tanya glanced at him, then back at me. "Miss May, this looks like a misunderstanding." I held up a hand. "Tanya, hush. Let the man speak for himself." Derek's voice cracked. "Ma, I wasn't trying to steal from you. I was just organizing things." "Organizing?" I said softly. "Is that what you call emptying your mama's account?" He swallowed hard, eyes darting toward the door like he was looking for a way out. But I wasn't done. "Not yet. See, baby," I continued, "when I told you to come for dinner, I wanted to remind you of something. When you were 10, and your daddy left us, we ate beans out of a can for 2 weeks straight. And I told you then, we might not have much, but what we have, we earn together. That was the deal. That was our promise. And you broke it." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Tanya shifted in her chair, whispering, "Derek, let's just go." But I shook my head. "No, baby. You stay. You both need to hear the rest." Derek tried to speak, but I cut him off gently. "I'm not mad at you, son. Not yet. But I am disappointed in the man you've become. And I need you to know, I'm not the woman you think you can handle." I stood up slowly, walked over to the counter, and picked up a small brown folder. "Set it right next to the envelope. Inside that folder," I said, "is something special. It's the deed to this house. And tomorrow, that deed's going somewhere neither of you can touch." Derek frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled, the kind of smile that hides more than it shows. "You'll see, baby. You'll see tomorrow." Then I sat back down, spooned myself a bit of pot roast, and said, "Now, y'all can stay for dinner or you can leave hungry. But either way, the truth's already been served." They didn't touch a bite. And by the time they left that night, I could feel the distance between us stretch like a rope about to snap. I knew Derek would come back, not for forgiveness, but for answers. And when he did, that's when my real plan would begin. Because sometimes, to teach a lesson, you have to let the person believe they're still winning. After they left that night, I sat in the quiet for a long time. The house felt too still, like the air itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. I kept replaying Derek's face in my mind, that flash of fear behind his eyes. It wasn't guilt, it was panic. He wasn't scared because he'd hurt me. He was scared because he'd been caught. I washed the dishes slow, one by one, until the water went cold. The smell of pot roast still lingered in the air, mixed with Tanya's perfume and something else. The faint, sour scent of disappointment. When I finally sat down at the kitchen table, I looked at that open envelope again. All those papers, all that proof. And instead of feeling proud, I felt tired. Not just in my bones, in my spirit. You raise a child thinking love will protect you. You teach them right from wrong, hoping it'll echo in their heart forever. But sometimes, what you plant grows into something wild. And all you can do is watch it tear through the garden you built. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was Derek. I let it ring twice before answering. "Morning, baby," I said, calm as Sunday. "Ma," he said quickly, "we need to talk. I think you misunderstood last night." "Oh, did I?" I said softly. "Well, come on over then. My door's open." He showed up an hour later, no Tanya this time. Just him, standing in the doorway like a boy who'd been sent to apologize. But his eyes weren't soft, they were calculating. He sat down across from me, clasped his hands, and said, "Ma, I looked at the paperwork. Those transfers, they weren't what you think. Tanya was just helping me move some things around. We didn't take anything from you." I raised an eyebrow. "That so?" He nodded. "Yeah. And look, I already moved the money back. Check your account if you don't believe me." I opened my laptop. He was right, the money was back. Every dollar. But something about that quick fix made me uneasy. "You see, Ma," he said, smiling faintly, "I told you I'd take care of you. You don't have to worry." I leaned back in my chair and said, "You moved it back fast, baby. Almost like you expected me to notice." His smile faltered. "I just didn't want you upset." I said, watching him closely. "And what does Tanya think about all this?" "She doesn't know I came," he said quickly. "She thinks you're just overreacting." There it was. That word. Overreacting. It always shows up right before someone lies again. I let out a little chuckle. Overreacting, that's funny. 'Cause if someone emptied your account, you'd be howlin', not whisperin'. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "Ma, you gotta trust me." I smiled. "Trust is earned, baby. You might remember that, I taught it to you." The tension in the room thickened like summer heat. He stood up suddenly, pacing. "You can't just shut me out. I'm your son. I'm all you got." Those words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Because he was right, he was all I had left. But that didn't mean he got to own me. I stood up too. "Derek, you don't get to talk to me like I'm some fool who don't know what's going on. I see you. I see what you and that girl been trying to do. But I ain't the one you can hustle." He took a deep breath, rubbing his forehead. "Ma, I'm trying to make things easier for you. You're getting older." I cut him off with a look. "Older, not blind. Older, not stupid. Don't confuse the two." For a moment, neither of us said a word. Then, without warning, he grabbed the folder from the table, the one with the house deed, and flipped it open. "What's this?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "That's something I was gonna tell you about today." He scanned the paper, eyes narrowing. "You changed the deed." "Sure did," I said. "Moved it into a trust. My name and one other." His voice rose. "Whose name, Ma?" I tilted my head. "Someone who's been looking out for me longer than you have." His jaw tightened. "You mean Aunt Loretta?" "Maybe. Maybe not. You'll find out when it's time." He slammed the folder shut. "This ain't right, Ma. You can't just." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I can do whatever I damn well please. You forget who paid for this roof. You forget whose hands built the life you standing in." He froze. And for the first time, I saw something I hadn't seen in him since he was a child. Fear. Not the kind that comes from guilt, the kind that comes from losing control. He muttered something under his breath, grabbed his keys, and stormed out. The front door slammed so hard the picture of baby Derek on the wall rattled. I stood there, staring at that photo. He was smiling in it, missing tooth, wide eyes, holding that little goldfish again. I whispered, "You're still in there somewhere, baby. I just hope I can reach you before the rest of you disappears." That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded louder, every shadow felt closer. Around midnight, I got up and went to check the locks, twice. Then I pulled back the curtain, and that's when I saw it. A car parked across the street. Derek's car. Lights off. Engine running. He wasn't there to visit. He was watching. I closed the curtains slow and sat back down on my bed. My hands didn't shake this time, because in that moment, I knew something with cold, clear certainty. My son wasn't just trying to take my money anymore. He was trying to take my life apart, piece by piece. And the rope that had held us together all these years was starting to snap. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling the same thought, like a storm that wouldn't pass. What kind of man tells his mama her money belongs to him? By sunrise, I was sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee, staring at the sunlight bleeding through the curtains. The house was too quiet. No TV hum. No gospel music. Just the clock ticking, reminding me how still everything had become since James married Cassandra. That woman, she changed everything. I still remember the first time she came into my home, smiling too wide, eyes darting like she was scanning the place for something to judge. "You got such a cozy little house, Mrs. Carter," she said. "Feels like a time capsule." I laughed then. Thought she was joking. But later, I realized she meant every word. She didn't see warmth, she saw old. She saw weak. And James, my baby who used to pick dandelions for me every Mother's Day, he just stood there, holding her hand, proud. That morning, I sat thinking about how things used to be. About how he used to call every Sunday just to ask if I needed something fixed, or if I'd eaten. Then slowly, it turned into him asking me for things. Money for emergencies. Help for temporary setbacks. Now, he wanted my whole paycheck. I rubbed my temples and whispered to myself, I raised a man, not a thief. But that whisper wasn't enough. The ache in my chest needed air, needed release. So, I picked up the phone and called the only person I knew would tell me the truth, my sister, Dolores. She answered on the second ring, voice groggy and warm. "May, it's barely 8 in the morning. What's wrong, baby?" I told her everything, from James's demand to the cold way he said it, like I was just another bill to be managed. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she sighed, long and deep. "You know what this sounds like, May? Sounds like that woman done got in his head. Cassandra's been eyeing that house since the wedding." "I thought that too," I whispered. "But you think she'd really push him to take from me?" "Push him? Honey, she's probably the one driving the car." That hit me hard. Because deep down, I knew Dolores was right. Cassandra was ambitious, always talking about investments, financial growth, and making their money work for them. But my money. That afternoon, James called. I almost didn't answer. My finger hovered over the button, but my heart still belonged to him, no matter how much it hurt. "Hey, Ma," he said, voice light, casual. "Just checking if you had a chance to call HR about the account transfer. Cassandra said she could help you if you need." I froze. HR? He wasn't just talking, he'd already made plans. "James," I said slowly, "what makes you think I'm giving you my paycheck?" He chuckled, like I was being silly. "Ma, come on. You don't need that stress. Let me and Cassandra handle the bills. You can just relax." "Relax?" My voice cracked. "Relax while you strip me of everything I've worked for?" He sighed, annoyed. "It's not like that. You're being dramatic." I gripped the phone tighter. "You listen to me, James Carter. Ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do with what's mine. Not you. Not that woman. Not nobody." There was a pause. Then his voice turned sharp, colder than I'd ever heard it. "You know what, Ma? You're marking this harder than it has to be. You don't trust me, fine. But don't call me when the house falls apart, or when you can't keep up with your bills." The line went dead before I could answer. I sat there, shaking. Not from anger, from heartbreak. Because in that moment, I realized my son wasn't protecting me. He was controlling me. Later that day, Dolores stopped by with some groceries. She took one look at my face and said, "You look like you just buried someone." I laughed bitterly. Maybe I did. We sat in the living room, two old women surrounded by silence and memories. Then Dolores leaned closer. "You know what you need to do, May? You need to make sure your affairs are in order. Lock down your money, change your will, and make sure you got control. I nodded. I already started thinking about that. I got something planned for when they come over Friday. Dolores raised an eyebrow. What you got up your sleeve? I smiled, slow and knowing. Let's just say, they about to see who's really in charge. Friday came quicker than I expected. I cooked like I always did, fried catfish, baked macaroni, collard greens, cornbread. Smells so good you'd think love was in the air. But this time, it wasn't love I was serving. It was revelation. Around 6, their car pulled up. I heard Cassandra's laugh before she even knocked. James followed behind, holding a bottle of cheap wine like peace offering. Evening, Ma, he said, leaning in for a hug. I didn't move. They sat down, chatting like nothing was wrong. I smiled, nodded, and kept serving plates. Then I said, real calm, before we eat, I got something I wanna show y'all. James frowned. What's that? I pulled out an envelope from my purse and slid it across the table. That right there is a notarized statement. Says my bank account, pension, and house are now in a trust. Managed by me, and only me. So, if anybody tries to move my money or touch this house, they'll be dealing with the law. Cassandra's face went pale. James's mouth fell open. Ma, what? Why would you do that? I looked him dead in the eye. Because, baby, I'm done letting folks treat me like I don't know my own worth. For a moment, nobody said a word. The only sound was the clock ticking in the background, steady, sharp, final. Then Cassandra tried to smile. You didn't have to go that far, Mrs. Carter. We just wanted to help. I leaned forward, voice low and firm. Sweetheart, if that's your idea of help, then Lord help you. The air turned heavy, and that's when it happened, a loud crack. Something shattered on the floor. James had dropped his glass, hands trembling. This ain't right, Ma, he said quietly. You're turning on me. No, James, I said, eyes steady. You turned on me. They left soon after. Cassandra's heels clicked all the way down the walkway. James didn't look back once. That night, as I cleaned the dishes, I heard the faintest sound from the hallway, something breaking again, but softer this time. It wasn't a glass. It was the sound of a mother's heart cracking in two. Still, I whispered to myself, if you're listening right now, please like, subscribe, and share, and drop your birth year in the comments. If we're the same age, I've got a little surprise waiting for you there. Then I wiped the counter, turned off the lights, and let the silence remind me that peace sometimes sounds a lot like loneliness. But peace is still peace. And that night, I finally claimed mine. It had been a week since that dinner, the night I drew my line in the sand. And Lord knows, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured once I stood my ground, my son would cool off, realize how far gone he'd gotten. But silence has its own language. When someone you love stops calling, stops checking in, stops even pretending to care, that quiet starts to sound a whole lot like goodbye. James didn't call. Not once. Cassandra didn't either. The only sound that filled my home was the creak of the old floors and the hum of the refrigerator, and every now and then, the echo of his voice in my mind. From now on, I want your paycheck sent to my account. I tried to stay busy. Church meetings, garden work, volunteering at the center downtown. But no matter how much I filled my days, that ache followed me like a shadow. Because a mother never stops loving her child, even when that child becomes a stranger. One afternoon, while I was sweeping the porch, Dolores pulled up in her old Bic. She got out, waving an envelope in her hand. Girl, you better sit down for this, she said, walking up the steps. You remember that neighbor, Denise? The one works at First Union Bank? I frowned. Yeah, what about her? Well, Dolores said, sitting beside me, she called me last night. Said something came across her desk. Something with your name on it. My heart sank. What kind of something? A withdrawal request, she said, lowering her voice. $10,000. Supposedly authorized by you. I froze. The broom slipped from my hand. That's impossible. I haven't withdrawn a dime. That's what Denise thought, Dolores said. So, she held it up. Said the signature didn't look right. My mind started spinning. Who would? Then it hit me. Cassandra. I felt a chill crawl up my back. She's got access. That girl's been watching me, Dolores. She must have found something. Maybe through James. Dolores shook her head. Lord have mercy. You think she's bold enough to forge your name? I don't think, I said quietly. I know. That night, I went digging. Through drawers, cabinets, anywhere Cassandra might have snooped. My bank papers, my check stubs, even my old mail. And that's when I found it, tucked behind my filing box. A small black notebook. One I hadn't seen before. At first, I thought it was mine, just misplaced. But when I opened it, I realized it wasn't my handwriting. It was neat, tight, deliberate, like someone writing for proof. I flipped through the pages, and my heart started pounding. It was full of numbers, dates, payments, small withdrawals over the last 6 months. All from my account. Every note was signed C+J. I sat down hard, feeling the room tilt. Lord Jesus, I whispered. They've been taking from me little by little. I kept turning pages, and near the back, I saw a section labeled Future Assets. There was a list. Mom's house, estimated value $315,000. Pension account, approximate $87,000 remaining. Insurance policy, pending beneficiary change. That last one stopped me cold. Insurance policy. I hadn't touched that policy in years, since before James got married. My husband, God rest his soul, made me promise never to cancel it. Just in case, he'd said. You never know who might need protecting one day. And now, someone was trying to make themselves that who. I picked up the phone and called Denise. She confirmed it all. May, she said softly, someone's been accessing your online account using your son's email. I couldn't say anything until now, but I've been watching it. It started small, a few transfers here and there. But lately, it's gotten bolder. My knees went weak. You're saying my own child's been stealing from me? There was a pause. Then she said, looks that way, honey. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dark, that little black book on the table, the house still as a graveyard. I thought about every meal I'd cooked for him, every Christmas morning, every prayer I'd whispered when he was sick as a baby. And now, this. But see, I wasn't raised to be a fool. My mama used to say, when folks show you who they are, you take notes, not chances. So, I decided it was time to show James and Cassandra that I wasn't just some lonely old lady waiting to be used up. I called my lawyer the next morning. Told him everything. He came over that afternoon, a tall man with kind eyes and a slow way of talking that calmed me just enough to breathe again. We'll handle this carefully, Ms. Carter, he said. You've done the right thing keeping this ledger. It's solid proof. Now, do you want to confront them or let me? I looked him straight in the eye. Oh, I'll do it myself. But not yet. Let's just say I want to see how far they'll go. Over the next few days, I acted normal. I even called James, left a message about Sunday dinner, said I was marking pot roast. He didn't answer, of course, but Cassandra texted, we'll think about it. That was all I needed. Because I'd already planned the next move. Sunday came. I set the table like always, candles lit, the house smelling like home. I wore my best dress, the one James said made me look like a queen when he was little. When their car pulled up, I took a deep breath and whispered, Lord, give me strength not to lose my temper. They came in all smiles again, pretending nothing ever happened. Cassandra even kissed my cheek like she hadn't tried to rob me blind. Dinner smells great, Mrs. Carter, she said sweetly. Thank you, baby, I replied. Why don't you all sit down? I got something special for dessert. We ate, made small talk, and just when I saw James relax, that's when I said, by the way, I had a lovely visit from my lawyer this week. The fork froze halfway to his mouth. Cassandra blinked. Lawyer? Yes, I said. He showed me something real interesting. Did you all know there's a federal penalty for falsifying financial documents? They call it elder fraud. Carries up to 20 years. Cassandra's smile cracked. Mrs. Carter, I don't know what you mean. I reached under the table and placed the black notebook right between their plates. Then maybe this will refresh your memory. James's face went white. He stared down at it like it was a bomb about to explode. Where did you get that? He whispered. Where do you think? I said softly. From the same place you hid it, in my house. Cassandra's hand trembled. May, listen, we were gonna pay you back. I raised my hand. Don't you dare lie in my face. Not in this house. For a long moment, nobody said a word. Then James slammed his hands on the table, voice cracking. You don't understand. We're drowning, Ma. Cassandra lost her job, the mortgage is killing us, and you're sitting here with money just rotting. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. So, you decided to steal from the woman who gave you life. It wasn't like that, he shouted. I thought you wouldn't notice. Oh, baby, I said quietly. That's the problem right there. You stopped seeing me a long time ago. You only saw what I had. The room fell silent again. Then Cassandra stood, grabbing her purse. Let's go, James. He hesitated. Looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. But I could tell, the boy I raised wasn't the man standing there anymore. They walked out. The door shut behind them with a sound that echoed through every bone in my body. I thought that was the end. But 3 nights later, something happened that told me this fight wasn't over. It was just after midnight when I heard a noise outside, footsteps crunching on the gravel, low whispers, a car idling too long. Then, through the curtains, I saw a flashlight beam sweep across my window. I grabbed the phone, my heart pounding. Lord, I whispered, don't let it be what I think it is. Because deep down, I already knew. It wasn't a stranger. It was my son. And he'd come back for what he thought still belonged to him. The sound outside my window wasn't just a car engine anymore. It was footsteps, heavy, cautious, and far too familiar. The kind of steps I knew in my bones. My son's. I moved slowly through the dark hallway, my old heart hammering like a drum. I didn't turn on a light. Didn't make a sound. I just listened. There it was again, the soft scrape of a shoe across gravel. Then a whisper. A woman's voice. Cassandra. My stomach twisted. They came together. Part of me wanted to fling open that door and tell them I wasn't afraid, but another part, the part that had learned to survive, knew better. I crept toward the front room and peeked through the lace curtain. James was standing near the porch, a flashlight in one hand and something small and shiny in the other. I squinted. A screwdriver. James, Cassandra whispered harshly, this is crazy. What if she calls the cops? He snapped, she won't. She's asleep. I just need to get that ledger back before she does something stupid with it. Ledger. That black book. My fingers clenched. He wasn't here for forgiveness. He was here to destroy the evidence. I slipped back from the window and took a slow, shaky breath. Lord, give me wisdom, I whispered. The back of the house was dark, but the moonlight spilling through the kitchen window gave me enough to see. I reached under the counter and pulled out the little emergency phone my late husband used to keep charged for storms. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is May Carter, I whispered. My son's outside my house. He's trying to break in. Please, send someone quick. Stay on the line, Lock yourself in a room if you can. I nodded, though the operator couldn't see me. My hands trembled as I locked the back door and grabbed the heavy flashlight from the counter. Then, crack, a sound from the front porch. The door handle rattled. Once. Twice. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Then I heard Cassandra's voice again, softer this time. James, please. Let's just go. She's your mother. He muttered, she made her choice. I heard the sound of wood splintering, the old latch giving way. He was coming in. Something inside me snapped. Not fear, but something deeper. A strength I hadn't felt since the day I buried my husband. I flicked on the flashlight and aimed it toward the door just as it swung open. The beam caught James square in the face. Don't move, I said, my voice low, firm. I already called the police. He froze, one hand still on the knob. His eyes darted from me to the hall. Ma, please. I just came to talk. Talk? I said. With a screwdriver in your hand. He dropped it quick, like it burned him. You don't understand, Ma. Cassandra, she's scared. We didn't mean for things to get this bad. Cassandra stood behind him, her face pale. Mrs. Carter, please. We're desperate. We just need. You need my life savings? I snapped. You already took enough. You took my trust, my peace, my son. James took a step forward, his voice breaking. I didn't come to hurt you. I swear. I just can't lose everything. You already did, I said softly. He stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then, the red and blue lights flickered outside. Cassandra gasped. Oh God. You really called them? Damn right I did, I said. James turned toward the window, panic flashing in his eyes. They'll ruin me, Ma. Please. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. He looked like a little boy again for half a second, scared, helpless. But that image vanished as soon as I remembered what he'd done. I can't protect you from yourself anymore, I said, my voice breaking. You made this bed, James. Now you can lie in it. He backed away as the officers came through the door. Hands up, they shouted. Cassandra screamed. James froze. They cuffed him right there in my living room, the same room where I'd rocked him to sleep, where he'd opened Christmas presents, where he'd danced with me to All Green when he was 10. And now, he stood there in handcuffs, looking at me like I was the stranger. Ma, he whispered. How could you? I felt my knees go weak. Because I loved you enough to stop you. They led him out the door, Cassandra crying and begging them to let her explain. When the lights disappeared down the road, the house fell quiet again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, filled with grief and truth. I sank into the armchair and buried my face in my hands. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. I'd already shed enough for a lifetime. Then the phone rang. It was Dolores. May. Girl, I just saw the police lights from my window. Are you all right? I took a deep breath. I'm fine, Dolores. Just tired. Oh, honey. I warned you that boy was running wild. But you did what you had to do. I know, I said quietly. But knowing don't make it hurt any less. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, you raised him right. He made his own choices. Maybe this'll be what wakes him up. I stared out the window at the empty street. Maybe, I whispered. Or maybe I already lost him. After we hung up, I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of cold coffee from the pot still sitting on the stove. My hands shook, so I set it down before I spilled. I turned toward the hallway, and froze. The front door was still cracked open. The night air drifted in, carrying the faint sound of the wind chime my husband had hung decades ago. It tinkled softly, almost like a lullaby. And that's when I saw it, something shiny glinting on the floor near the doorway. I bent down slowly, knees aching, and picked it up. A small brass key. It wasn't mine. It had a tag attached to it that read, Locker 215, Grandview Storage. I stared at it, my mind racing. Why would James have a storage locker? What could be in there? Then it hit me. The ledger. The missing money. The rest of the truth. I clutched that key in my hand, the cool metal biting into my palm. This ain't over yet, I whispered. Because for all the pain of that night, I knew one thing for sure, there was still more hiding beneath the surface. And if I wanted peace, I had to face whatever secrets that locker held. Even if it broke my heart all over again. The sky outside was bruised with clouds, and the wind howled through the broken windows like a warning. The old farmhouse creaked under the weight of the storm, but inside, a different kind of thunder was brewing. Elaine stood at the foot of the stairs, her breath trembling, her hand clutching the torn envelope that started it all. The truth had come out, every lie, every betrayal, every stolen year. The man she once loved, the son she raised, the family that turned their back, they had all been exposed. Her eyes glimmered with something fierce now. Not rage. Not even sorrow. It was freedom, the kind that only comes when there's nothing left to lose. The door burst open. Rain came slicing through the air like cold glass. Her son, Marcus, stepped in, soaked, ashamed, his shoulders hunched like a boy again. Behind him came the sheriff, slow and steady, hat in hand. "Elaine," Marcus said softly, his voice swallowed by the storm. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't." She lifted her hand, silencing him. "Don't lie again, baby. The truth done walked through that door before you did." Marcus dropped his head. He looked so small then, like the boy who used to climb up in her lap after nightmares. But that boy was gone, buried beneath the years of greed and pride. "You took everything," she whispered. "Your daddy's land, your sister's peace, my trust. And for what? A piece of paper? A name on a deed?" He tried to speak, but the sheriff's hand on his shoulder said more than words ever could. Elaine looked at him for a long time, the kind of look only a mother could give, one that held love and disappointment all tangled together. "You know," she said softly, "I used to pray the Lord would bring you home. But now I see, some folks gotta lose everything to find their way." Marcus' eyes filled with tears. "Mama." But she turned away, her voice breaking like thunder. "Don't call me that right now. Not tonight." The sheriff led him out, and the wind slammed the door shut. Silence filled the house. Heavy. Sacred. Elaine sank into the rocking chair by the window, the same chair her mother once used when life felt too heavy. The rain kept falling, but her heart felt light for the first time in years. In the corner of the room, the old clock ticked. It hadn't worked in decades, but tonight, it came alive. Tick, 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 marking the start of something new. She closed her eyes and whispered, "You see me now, Mama? I ain't the same woman no more. I survived what tried to break me." Outside, the wind began to settle, and the storm softened into a gentle rain. Elaine smiled faintly. It was as if the heavens themselves were washing away the last bit of pain. A knock echoed from the porch. She frowned, pulled herself up, and opened the door. There stood her sister, Ruth, gray-haired, soaked to the bone, and trembling. "I heard what happened," Ruth said, her voice cracking. "I had to come." Elaine stared at her for a long time. The years of silence between them were thick, filled with regret, pride, and too many unspoken words. But then, something inside Elaine softened. "Come on in, Ruth. Let's not let the past keep us cold anymore." Ruth stepped in, and the two women stood there, two old souls who'd seen too much, hurt too much, but still had love left to give. They sat by the fire, the light flickering on their tired faces. Ruth reached over, took Elaine's hand, and for the first time in decades, the sisters sat in peace. "You always were the strong one," Ruth murmured. Elaine smiled faintly. "Strong don't mean unbroken. But maybe broken's what made me strong." The rain outside slowed to a whisper, and through the cracked window, the dawn began to push back the night. Elaine leaned back, closed her eyes, and breathed deep. The ghosts of her past, her husband, her mistakes, her losses, they didn't haunt her anymore. They were just part of the story now. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the ending. "If you're listening right now," she said softly, her voice trembling with truth, "don't let nobody steal your peace, not even the ones you love. Sometimes walking away ain't giving up. It's setting yourself free." The fire crackled. Ruth squeezed her hand tighter. Elaine smiled. "Now, if you're still here with me, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this story. And drop your birth year in the comments. I want to see how many of my sisters out there done learned how to survive their own storms." And with that, the old house stood still again, not as a place of pain, but as a home reborn in peace. Morning came slow, like it was afraid to wake her. The golden light slid across the floorboards, touching the old photographs, the half-burned candle, and finally resting on Elaine's face. She opened her eyes to quiet, the kind of quiet that comes only after a storm has spent its rage. The farmhouse was still standing, though the roof had leaked and the walls groaned in the wind. But inside, it felt different now. Lighter. Free. Elaine pulled the shawl around her shoulders and walked to the window. Outside, the trees dripped from the rain, and a soft mist hugged the fields that once belonged to her husband, the land that caused so much pain, now peaceful again. She stood there, hands trembling, heart steady. For a long time, she didn't say a word. She just listened, to the birds, to the creak of the porch, to her own breath. For the first time in years, she wasn't listening for footsteps, or arguments, or betrayal. Just peace. Ruth shuffled in behind her, her grey curls still damp from the night before. "You up early," she said softly, rubbing her hands together. "Couldn't sleep much," Elaine replied. "Didn't wanna miss the sunrise. Feels like the first one I've seen in forever." Ruth nodded. "You held your ground last night, Elaine. Mama would have been proud." Elaine smiled faintly, her eyes glassy. "Mama always said, the truth might tear through your life like a storm, but when it passes, it leaves everything clean." They stood there together, watching the sun stretch its arms across the horizon. Ruth broke the silence. "What you gonna do now? You got the land back, the truth's out, but where do you go from here?" Elaine took a long breath. "I think I just gonna live, Ruth. Not survive. Not endure. Just live." She turned toward the table where an old photo sat, her children as babies, her husband standing tall behind them, before the secrets, before the greed. She touched the glass gently, her fingers tracing the faces she once thought she lost forever. "You know," she said quietly, "for so long, I thought my story was about pain. About what was taken from me. But maybe it was really about what I still had left, faith, strength, and a heart that just wouldn't quit." Ruth reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "That's what makes you you, Elaine. You always had more fire than fear." A knock came at the door. Both women turned. When Elaine opened it, a young woman stood there, dark-skinned, mid-20s, with tear-streaked cheeks and trembling hands. "Miss Elaine," the girl said softly. "I'm sorry to come unannounced. My name's Jasmine. I'm your granddaughter." Elaine froze, her breath catching in her throat. "My what?" "Marcus' daughter," the girl said. "I didn't know where else to go. I heard what happened." The world seemed to tilt for a second. Elaine's hand gripped the doorframe. She stared at the girl, the same brown eyes, the same gentle mouth. So much like her son before life hardened him. "Lord have mercy," Elaine whispered. "Come in, baby." Jasmine stepped inside, nervous but hopeful. The air shifted again, new life, new blood, new chance. Ruth smiled quietly. "Well, looks like the Lord ain't done writing your story yet." Elaine chuckled softly, wiping her eyes. "No, he sure ain't." They sat around the kitchen table, where stories were once whispered in fear. This time, the room filled with laughter, tears, and the clinking of coffee cups. Elaine told Jasmine about the old days, about her daddy before the mistakes, about the land, about the storm that broke and healed them all. When Jasmine reached across and held her hand, Elaine felt something shift deep inside her chest, forgiveness. Not the easy kind, but the kind that takes years to find. Later that evening, when Ruth and Jasmine had gone into town, Elaine stepped onto the porch. The sunset stretched wide across the sky, painted in oranges and golds. She breathed in the scent of wet earth and pine. A soft voice seemed to whisper through the breeze, her mother's voice, gentle as ever. "You did good, baby girl. You didn't let the pain turn you mean." Elaine smiled through her tears. "Took me a lifetime, Mama, but I got there." She sat in her rocking chair, letting it creak slow and steady, her heart full. Then she looked straight ahead, like she was talking to every soul listening through the screen. "Now listen here," she said, voice warm but firm. "If you're still with me after all this, I want you to remember something. Life can test you, break you, twist you inside out, but you can come out whole if you don't lose your truth. Don't ever let bitterness take root where love used to live." She chuckled softly. "And if you've ever been through your own kind of storm, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share this story, 'cause somebody out there need to hear it too. And drop your birth year in the comments. Let me see how many strong hearts made it through just like me." The camera would have panned out right there, the golden light wrapping around her, the rocking chair moving slow, the wind humming like an old hymn. Elaine closed her eyes, whispering, "The storm's gone now, And I'm still here. The last frame would hold her there, peaceful, unbroken, bathed in light. The music fades. The story ends. But her voice, her truth, lingers.